Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Trading Secrets. This channel is for entertainment purposes only. For those of you who do not know, my name is Ali. I have over 20 years experience teaching accounting, economics, business and law. Through this channel I'll be providing some stock analysis and a quick update on the $1 Million Challenge. So if anybody's not aware of this is a journey with investment of $1,000 to a return of $1 million over a period of 3 years using a strategy called compound return investing. So the objective is try to get 201 trades, each with an average return of 3.5%. It's not 201 consecutive trades, we do take into account losses. So for further details about how to join us for as little as $9 a month, information is available in the description below. In the previous video we looked at the key changes in the S1 Amendment version 3, so please refer back to the previous video for details of the key changes. In today's video I'm going to be looking at your top 10 questions received so far with regard to what may happen this week and key questions with regard to the last few days that I expect to see MMTLP trading. So again, a key recap of some key questions and also some new questions which we'll be going over, so stay tuned for that. Let's first of all start by having a look at some general outlook in terms of the market. So a quick headline here from Bloomberg. This is a positive headline, and we can see here after a $13 trillion stock crash, traders are now ready to fight back. So in my opinion, I think now investing in some of the key mega stocks, blue chip companies especially, I think there is a much more upside than downside right now. I think what we can see here is bullish bets are now on the up. Inflation and Fed hikes have certainly been priced in. So demand for bearish options looks muted, all other things considered. So the market has been going through a very difficult time. So hopefully, according to this headline here, we are either close to the bottom or at the bottom. But one other piece of news here from the Wall Street Journal, and that is we can see important headline: Nasdaq is freezing Chinese small cap IPOs after price spikes. So if you remember, one of the stocks that this happened to was the symbol HKD. And the exchange is now clamping down after some significant amount of volatility. So that's an important development with regard to the Chinese stocks. So let's make a start on today's video. So quick reminder in terms of what I posted earlier. So what I stated here is after the third and hopefully final submission of amendments in the next video, which is this current video, I'm going to be featuring the best questions and predictions for the week, and obviously I have now gathered those questions, so I was also happy to accept questions from the shorts or short questions, whichever way you want to interpret that. So let's have a look at one of the first response I'm going to look at. So shout out here to Gary, and what Gary said here is, let's say there is no sale and we decide to become producer, is this worse for non-naked shorts because they would owe into perpetuity? So first of all, I'm going to share my response to this post, and what I've said here, this would be highly unlikely, certainly in my opinion, and one of the reasons for that is NextBridge does not have sufficient funds to complete all drilling and become commercially viable. So due to the requirements of the lease, if they start drilling, then they have to carry out drilling consistently across all the wells, and after obviously so many days, I think it might be every 90 days, but obviously the key thing here is a buyer is needed. So NextBridge is not able to operate fully, extract the oil, sell the oil, produce the oil. It's just not, it doesn't have the cash. So really going forward, it will be held until a buyer is found, and I think that was stated by the company earlier. So in terms of any possibilities of the company running things from an operational and production point of view, and running as an entity on a public trading platform, I do not see that happening. So in line with the same question, shout out here to Kev, and he stated a similar question. So this is still question one. What he said is in terms of what he's picked up, and I've seen this with other people as well, there has been an SEC filing, and that is with regard to the CEO Clifton DeBrose. This tells me there isn't a sale. You don't hire a CEO of a sold company, you hire one to run it for the future. So first of all, nobody is saying the company is sold, but because obviously it will officially be sold until it cannot be sold until it's become NextBridge and the documents and the contracts and the agreements have been signed and sealed, but what we may have is an agreement for a sale. So that's what we may have right now, but what we don't have is a sale. So that's something to be aware of. So again, Kev does raise an important point. So this is the contract here that Kev is referring to. So this is an employment agreement, and what's important here, this is dated 21st of October 2022. So what are the reasons why this employment was first of all issued, and obviously it seems to be dated just before we are going into NextBridge. So in my opinion, I think first of all major companies, and in this case we're looking at a potential multi-billion-dollar company in terms of the valuation based on the assets, is going to need a CEO. It's going to need a well rewarded CEO. So Clifton here has been given this contract. So why has he been given this contract? First of all, the spin out is going into NextBridge. NextBridge will be an independent company. George and everybody associated with Meta will have no links to it, no power over it, and no running in terms of the management. So Clifton will be the main person here in charge. So he must have a contract. So that's one reason why he's been given a contract. So my other opinion here, I would like to share with you here section 3.3, and this states here some equity compensation that he may be entitled to here. So we can see here the executive shall be granted an option to purchase up to 4.9 million shares of common stock of the company. So that gives him an entitlement there. So let's say I'm going to share with you why that may be important here. And further down below section 3 and 4, the company shall pay the executive an incentive bonus. That was section 3. Section 4, the company shall pay the executive the minimum target incentive bonus. So what I personally see here is NextBridge and the current management making sure that people responsible for the spin out, which obviously the signatures will be from Clifton and everybody else in the team, are also rewarded. So Clifton is going to be wanting to be rewarded. So by having this contract, whoever is a buyer will have to make sure Clifton is rewarded. So obviously the company are making the decision that yes, this person has a contract, he needs to be rewarded. And question number 2 is with regard to a potential buyer. So first shout out here is to Dark Helmet, and what he stated here is also who is paying for the new wells being drilled right now, question mark, not shareholders. So the speculation here is there a buyer agreeing to pay for this? Obviously this will be under an extremely strict confidentiality under agreement. So let's delve a little bit deeper into this question by giving another shout out here to Art Hook Feck. And what he's posted here is that a handful of connections between Rich Matteson, the geological characteristics of the Rio Grande and Occidentals, history in the area, and the tech Oxy that can extract the asset. So what Art Feck is speculating here, in his opinion, Oxy is the buyer, or he believes Oxy is the buyer in terms of what he's looked at. He's saying Oxy can extract the Oxy can extract the asset. Sorry. He's also saying that he's bringing Warren Buffett. We're talking about. He has a history of giving Oxy money to buy assets, which was worth $55 billion in a recent acquisition involving Anadarko. What Art Feck is also saying is basically he's not very good at digging, but maybe he's better at connecting the dots. So let's share a copy of my response. So in my opinion here, what I've said is I think Oxy is definitely in the running, but in my opinion I also think there are others in the running. So the one that I'm kind of focusing on a little bit more from my opinion is Exxon, and I believe they are also more than capable with huge amounts of cash, a mega market cap, and they can easily absorb a few additional shares from their point of view, and this will give the benefit of them requiring less cash. And certainly NextBridge will be an extremely attractive proposition to them. So we've got two opinions there. We've got Oxy and we've got Exxon. So what Art Feck has said here, fully agree. Exxon has also got the capital and the experience, and he thinks it will be a good investigation to compare Oxy and Exxon. So that's certainly something that I may look at into the future, but that's question number 2. Let's move on to question number 3. So question number 3 is with regard to MMTLP and any potential relationship with MMAT. So a question here is from Cornelius good, and he stated here, if MMTLP runs, do you think MMAT will run as well? So first of all, let's clarify that both companies will be independent. They will not have any common ground in terms of sector. One is going to be in oil, gas, energy, etc. And MMAT is more of a tech stock, so no relationship whatsoever. So they're going to be completely independent. But let's follow on from this question. Shout out here to Thomas K100. He stated here, I wonder if a squeeze on MMTLP, what that has to do with MMAT. He's going to use the money he makes on MMTLP and put that back in MMAT, and he also believes a lot of OGs will also do the same. And finally, shout out here to DRA Reg. He said, imagine if a 10% reinvest is in MMAT, average price investors sold is $10, that would be more than $165 million at current price, which would drive up the price of MMAT. So as long as investors reinvest in MMAT, the price goes up. So overall, my opinion here is, although the companies are completely separate, I think the key feature they have in common is they have common investors. So people who generally invest in MMTLP right now have also invested in MMAT, so there is a very, very strong link in terms of the investors. So the owners of MMTLP in terms of shareholders are also going to be the owners of MMAT in terms of a significant majority. So how will that benefit MMAT? So I do agree with all these posts here. I think many people, especially even the OGs, will reinvest some of that profit from MMTLP, and that will cause MMAT to run. So I do agree that MMAT will benefit from a potential squeeze in MMTLP. So question 4 here is a shout out to Mr. Midwestern Investor. So very simple question. He stated, I think we're going to get approval Friday. We'll then get dates, and then it will run like Torch. So if you remember, Torch did squeeze, but on that occasion, very, very few people did sell. But this time he thinks the squeeze could be higher. So obviously the general advice is make a plan, as this could go crazy. So I agree with everything that Mr. Midwestern Investor is saying here. I do think there is a very significant positive chance of a squeeze. I also think there's also a very extremely high likelihood of approval by Friday. I think it even could come on Thursday. So that's what the opinion is with regard to approval and a squeeze. So next question, question 5, is with regard to why did we have additional amendments. And I think I stated in the previous video, I don't think this was the fault of the company itself. I think this was the SEC itself asking for additional information that it did not ask in the previous version. So this is, from my point of view, I believe this is purely down to the SEC asking for additional details it didn't ask for previously. So shout out here to C Speedy. He stated here, please look at 2 scenarios for the SEC requesting the addition of no current negotiation. So if you remember the previous video, that's one of the key things that we looked at. So why have the SEC insisted on this? So first of all, they do not want to warn investors who hold through Nextbridge to feel deceived, and there is no immediate sell that takes place. This would be a fair warning to sell, so that's understandable. Obviously investors do need to know the risks. Second thing here, there would have been, or he believes that it would have been, significant hedge fund pressure on the SEC to require amendment, potentially based on the theory that hedge funds may want to cover, they want to create a little bit of scare tactics. Shout out here to Isaac at the bottom, and what he said, he does agree, and he think obviously from the other point of view, this could certainly be a life-changing stock. So, and then finally here, shout out to Tan Shirley. He said he feels the same. The additional amendments required by the SEC were certainly minor, and obviously they want to add in that there is no buyer, there is no negotiation. So why are they insisting on that? So from my previous video, you'll remember that I said, well, let's just imagine there is negotiations happening right now and there is a buyer in place right now. Do you think it would have been added? Certainly not. They would not have said, look, currently there are negotiations, currently there is a buyer. And so one of the key reasons why they are now adding that in is, first of all, obviously some people will be nervous and stating, well, if there's no buyer, then we want to get out. So that could be one reason. Another reason is obviously there is a buyer, and if there is a buyer, there is no negotiations. The next question is going to be a common question, so shout out here to Mimi, and a very simple question: what is your price target? So in response to this question, I think that's a good question and a common question that many people are currently asking. So from my point of view, I think there are going to be two answers. One is the final price of MMTLP, or we could say the highest price that MMTLP may go to. The other answer is going to be based on the amount received from each share of NextBridge common stock. So I think there are two different price targets there. So let's start with, first of all, what could MMTLP squeeze to? So unfortunately, this is going to be a difficult question to answer, but in my opinion, I think we are in unknown territory. We're almost in unprecedented times. We're in a very unique situation where shorts have a time period to cover, so anything can happen. So I certainly think there is a more than realistic chance of this hitting over $100, but again, no risk, no reward. You have to carry out your own due diligence. Anything can happen. It could even go much higher than anybody expects. So all the cards are everything, all options are available, all scenarios and possibilities are available in this situation. I think this play that we are in is probably regarded as the highest reward with the highest risk. So it's one of those, and I also believe this play, if it comes out, will make huge number of millionaires. Question 7 here is also a question that has been previously asked, so we'll add this in as a reminder. Shout out here to Gilbert Wasserman, who stated here, several months back we were told to transfer our shares to a holding company when the S1 was approved. Does that apply to our brokers automatically? Make the transfer to NextBridge, thank you. So yes, there was a message earlier on when we first got the S1 to transfer to through AST. However, just for clarification again, any shares that you transfer with AST will not be eligible to be sold in any run-up, but those shares will be eligible to be exchanged for NextBridge. So if you do not transfer with AST and you hold, you will, if subject to your broker, you will be able to sell those in any run-up. So that's something to be aware of. And finally, the other thing, overall answer is everything currently depends on broker to broker. We are getting different scenarios where we are getting different answers. Some of the brokers do not even know what's going on, especially trading 212 and many of the European brokers. So we are not allowed to currently buy anymore. But many people in the US, especially through Fidelity, and I think Charles Schwab and many others can buy. But if you want to benefit from any run-up, certainly consider holding. And I believe once we have final approval, you will still be able to transfer, and then I think all brokers will be obliged to give you instructions. Question 8 here, shout out to Jamshed, and what he stated here is, I have 3. Maybe you have covered these in other videos, but first of all, his question is, will Berda, George and other insiders hold through the transfer? Number 2, if we hold through the transfer and we receive shares of the buying company and or cash, would that likely occur in 2022 or 2023? So will that be counted as a long-term capital gain for MMTLP being held since the beginning? How does what Fang bought in the basin differ from NextBridge? So let's deal with these questions. First of all, just for clarification purposes, Berda is not, and George, first of all, George, I believe, is not holding any MMTLP. Berda is technically not an insider, although I do believe he's very close to the insiders, and he would certainly possibly be aware of what's going on. However, what I am aware of is the significant shareholders and the significant OGs of MMTLP have all declared they are not going to sell, and they have not sold yet. So in terms of any payout, that when it might happen, could this be 2022? Could this be 2023? We're talking about NextBridge and a buyer and then receiving the cash. I think it's certainly possible it could drag out towards the end of 2022. We're kind of heading into November now, and it could possibly head out into early 2023. But I'm predicting if there is a buyer there and the deal is done, hopefully it is in the early stage of 2023. But there is a risk of significant delay there that you need to be aware of. Final question there is asking with regard to FANG. So the bird lady did cover this in one of her videos, so please check that video out. And finally, he's also asked about tax. So if you held through the original merger, you will qualify for lower capital gains, but that is if you are in the US. In the UK, if you are holding through an ISA, then you will have benefits of it being tax-free. Any other country, you will have to check your local tax laws. Let's get to question 9, and shout out here to BK Lynn Chris, and he stated here, I'd love to hear a discussion about what remaining tactics or tricks hedge funds might still utilize to kill or stifle any short squeeze. So obviously we're excited for a possible record-breaking run, and remember, obviously we are up against the major players and they have a lot more at their disposal. So definitely true. So I'm going to give a reminder of the post that I shared earlier. So I do believe there is a significant situation here. So we could view this almost like a battle. So what we are saying here and what they can do, and what I've stated here, first of all, they could flood the market with synthetic shares. They could use a immediate assault. They could get fake bulls to become bears, and I have seen a number of these fake bulls myself pretending to be bears. They can also use moles to spy, especially in groups or in chat room areas and Telegram groups, etc. They can also leak rumours to the SEC, and the common one that we're all aware of is they can pay bashers soup money, and we all know who we're talking about there. But basically what they cannot do is if you hold tight, you ignore what's going on, that will make it much more difficult for them. And the final question here is with regard to shorts and when we can expect brokers to ensure that this is no longer happening. So shout out here first of all to Energy, and he stated here, when do you think brokers will stop opening a new short position? It does not make sense for them to allow shorting to the last minute, especially as we're going into the spin-off. So great question there. So another shout out here to BK Lynn Chris again. So he stated here, since brokers know when MMTLP ticket is going to cease to exist in the near future, that will happen as soon as we get the dates, would they prohibit shorting a day earlier than the T+2 date, or would they simply allow businesses as usual shorting until the very last day of trading? So interesting perspective there. And finally, shout out here to Jimmy GTO6, who stated if shorts won't cover and close, the lenders will be forced to close their positions for them and buy back at market prices. Those market prices will depend on our limit order pricing and holding limits. I have a triple digit price set or I hold through. So great point here from Jimmy. First of all, in my opinion, I think the brokers, if they are sensible, will ensure that all shorts are covering well before the final dates. It certainly does not make sense for them to allow shorting up to the end because the brokers will be liable for any costs. So the brokers, I think, will be forcing the shorts to cover more earlier than maybe expected. So great point here for Jimmy as well. If people have got these very high limit orders, then obviously the shorts will have no choice. And we have been seeing, again featured in the previous video, one of the people I saw has a limit of $3,000, and now we are seeing people, many of them in 3 or 4 figures. So the game is certainly becoming very, very interesting. And finally, if anybody would like to get access to our weekly watch list, which will be made available to our Discord members prior to trading on the Monday, you can certainly consider joining us. We have made some excellent calls in the previous weekly watch list. And thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned.